We live in a society where so much of what we are taught and told and sold is often given to us, I don't think for our highest benefit, but ultimately from companies who are looking to, generate a profit. And that's not a terrible thing, right? Like, that's fine. These are probably people that just want to make some money like you and me. But we are, in a sense, for lack of a better word, being programmed by this information. And it literally runs our lives. Like 4 or 5 years ago, I was living in my dad's basement. I was making exactly $0. I had been still suffering with major anxiety. I was waking up crying, which I had been struggling with for probably 15 years. I wasn't on antidepressants anymore, but I had been before that for about a decade on Prozac. I had no YouTube channel. I had quit my job that I was at for 7 years. And basically, I wasn't in the best place ever. Fast forward to where I am now, I literally have the most amazing life. I have the most amazing friends. I have, I make great money. I have the most amazing job with the most freaking awesome boss, and my team is so awesome. I have zero anxiety, zero depression, and I literally just have such, it's kind of like the life of my dreams. And I'm not saying this braggadociously, it's more so that I think I realized what I was doing that was keeping me stuck, and how I shifted my attention to kind of, in a way, unlock all of that for me that I am now experiencing. Also, I eat carnivore, so preparing my food for the day, I just had to turn my stovetop off. I'm a carnivore coach, so that also helped. But what I want to talk about is this concept of focus. And it's that cheesy saying that you hear a lot of, where your focus goes, energy flows. Once I started actually paying attention to the thoughts that I was thinking in my day-to-day is really when my life started to actually turn around, and I started to get the things that I was dreaming of, that I wanted. What I was doing when I was in those places, and for years, is I was constantly thinking about my problems. I was constantly thinking about the things that I don't have, or I was really insecure with friendships. I had a lot of reason to be. There were some people in my life that weren't exactly the best friends to me, but I also was just kind of obsessed in my mind with thinking about how to solve these problems. So I would just stew about the problems and think about the issues that those issues, those friendships had. Same thing with money. It was I need to make more money. How do I make more money? These problem. Same thing went with anxiety. It was how do I fix this thing that's making me anxious? It was just this constant looping thing that I was doing. And I think that's what anxiety is that you're constantly looping thoughts that are not good thoughts. Once I started practicing this thing that I call the magic book, it sounds kind of stupid because it was never intended to be a public thing. It was a joke when I called it that. But once I started using what I call the magic book is when I really started to practice intentionally thinking. So I never plan on sharing the magic book because I don't think that it was ever something that, it just, I don't know how I stumbled across it, but I did, and it literally changed my life in every single freaking way. What I would do every single morning when I would wake up is I was unable to not think anxious thoughts, honestly, because I was just wired anxiously. That was how my thoughts were looping. And I instead would throw on something on a YouTube channel that would remind me that everything in this, that would soothe me in a sense. So it would plant other people's soothing, uplifting thoughts into my thoughts, so I wasn't thinking the same looping thought patterns. So for me, that was Abraham Hicks or Neville Goddard. I'm not Christian or religious, but I would listen to some pastors because they had some really good messages. And then after probably 30 minutes of doing that and stretching or walking or just moving the body and kind of getting around, moving around, this is 5:30 in the morning, right? I've talked to no one. That's kind of the point, is I'm just in my own head at that point. After doing that, then I would sit down, I'd go to this coffee shop, and I would just literally write down everything good that happened yesterday. And I would do it, this is like a key thing, is I would do it with music. So music was the most important factor in this, is that like with music, I think that we don't understand the power of music sometimes. Like I think we get it contextually, but when you really think about, like I'm thinking about things in this context in terms of frequencies. So if you're paying attention to science these days, if you're paying attention to what people are discovering in science these days, they're really focusing on quantum physics. They're studying what, consciousness is. And ultimately, all these physicists are coming out on major platforms like Joe Rogan, The Diary of a CEO, other places, and I've interviewed a few of them actually, top physicists communicating how the makeup of our universe is not space-time, like Einstein said it was. It's actually a layer deeper than that, and it's consciousness, meaning that the fundamental of our reality is based in consciousness. And for us, how do we experience, human beings, how do we experience consciousness? Ultimately, one of the ways is through our thoughts. So there's a lot of context out there about frequencies and how thoughts have different frequencies because thoughts carry emotion with them. And so if you have emotions behind your thoughts, that's going to plant you on a particular frequency, basically. And then, it's the basic law of attraction, right? Where it's like birds of a feather flock together. And that's kind of how the world works. Well, that's what I started to play with, was kind of the I wouldn't say the science behind that, but the actual act of paying attention to frequencies and thoughts. So again, back to the music thing, I throw on music, anything that made me feel good and uplifted and excited or just like mellow. This is after I listened to those YouTube videos. And I write down everything good that happened yesterday. And this isn't like a gratitude book. This is not a journal. This is not me writing down in bullet points. Like it's literally from the beginning of the day through the end of the day yesterday, anything good. So an example from like yesterday could be, I woke up at 5:30 in the morning. I felt warm in my bed. I felt cozy. My feet were warm. It was quiet. And then I got up and I threw on some clothes and I scootered to go get coffee. And on my way to coffee, it was just beautiful. It was quiet. The traffic, like this is literally what I'm writing down as I'm listening to music. There's no traffic. The stoplights are kind of cool as I scooter past them. And then I get to this coffee shop and my homegirl at the coffee shop, Mara, gives me a free coffee because she's awesome. And she and I have a moment there. But then I, fast forward to the middle of the day where I had a great exchange with my boss and we had a moment laughing about something. And then, it goes all the way to the night where it's like, okay, I ended up getting a text from a friend and the friend said something, that they were inviting me to an event, which felt good to be included. These kinds of things, these little things are the things that I started writing down. And as a result, it wasn't like this immediate thing where I was like, oh, everything in my life changed. Rather, it was kind of like this slow but steady elevation of my thought process. And if you want to take it to a real, woo-wee sounding level, of my frequency. So back to the things that like these physicists are studying, we are all surrounded by frequencies. We're all surrounded by different versions of frequencies. Every thought has its own frequency to it. And there's a kind of a spectrum of frequencies. The lowest is shame, I think it is, and the highest, most excited, like best feeling frequency is joy. And within that, there's all these different jealousy, fear, all these other things. So what I think I was stuck in for a very long time is this like frequency of anxiety, of shame, or something like that. And I was not able to think past those thoughts because, again, if we believe in anything to do with the law of attraction, which it's kind of like gravity, it's just a thing, it's there, it's like whether we like it or not, birds of a feather flock together, that's why all that stuff exists, those sayings. Well, we get what we are equal to. So because I was constantly anxious all the time and constantly looping those thoughts about anxiety all the time, the things that I was getting were equal to that. And then it was just reinforcing the negative shit that would happen in my life. So once I started actively doing this, it was this slow elevation of my frequency. And I was doing this for 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, 7 months. It went on. And as I kept doing this, it got easier and easier and easier because the momentum of good things to talk about kept growing because better things kept coming to me. because I was in a better mood. Now, I don't think it's as simple as that. Looking back on this retrospectively, I can think a little bit more about what was going on, kind of like what changed. We're really working with what's called the reticular activating system in the brain. And the reticular activating system is kind of like a mechanism for our brain to be able to notice things. We have so much shit going on in our day that it's not possible for our brain to notice everything, or we'd literally go insane, right? We have the 5 senses. That's how, we probably have more than that, but we have the 5 senses. That's how we collect information. And so there's just too much if we just let everything in. So the reticular activating system is a function of the brain which we tell it what to notice, and then it notices it. So I like to give the example of like if you're shopping for a car for some reason, and you go and you see a red Jeep, and you're like, oh, I love that red Jeep. Then you'll start to notice red Jeeps everywhere, if you know what I'm talking about, right? Like now you see it on the road, now you see it parked in that garage. Like you've never noticed red Jeeps before, and now you do. That's the function of the reticular activating system starting to kick in. So that's what I'm talking about, of activating this tool in our mind. And I don't think this is all very complicated. I really want to be very careful in talking about this, because I don't kid myself for a second in thinking that, I am the creator of this universe and I am God and all that kind of stuff. I really don't, because I believe in God. I believe in, human consciousness. I believe in all that kind of stuff. But if we're to kind of pay attention to what all of the literature and all the religions and everything out there kind of says, it's always based in love and gratitude and appreciation. Everything is always sort of based in that fundamental, taking the time to be grateful for things. And so I think where I fell short for so many years is I wasn't recognizing all the little amazing things that were happening in my life. My dad giving me a phone call just to chat. My sister talking to me for 35 minutes about, something going on in her life and really trusting me with personal information. Like, that's a cool thing. I wasn't noticing, just the cool exchanges at work that were happening that are very special when you take a moment to recognize. Or even just going to my office was like, fulfilling to me in so many ways, because it gave me purpose. Like, we talk about things just as they are in the day-to-day. We don't, I didn't used to notice all of the beautiful things in the day-to-day, and that's what I think this helped me change. And so if really we're gonna get to an existential level on this and take this from another level, I think truly one of the reasons I ended up getting so much of my life turning around is because I tapped into kind of this universal language that we all can do. And that's that kind of theory, that theme, that constant thing you hear about, which is love and appreciation. But it has to be based in truly just the appreciation of that experience. If I wasn't writing for the sake of trying to manifest things. I think that's a mistake. I think that's ego driven. I was writing because I just felt like shit. And I just wanted to be happy and be anxious. And as a result, I changed my life. I changed my mind. I changed how I felt. And again, from day one when I started doing this, all the way from 6 months later, the way I thought about things, the things I noticed, totally changed. And then the people in my life as a result totally changed, because you can only get what you're equal to, right? So it's like, if I'm in a shitty mood and I'm angry and I'm kind of I'm not really going to come across the people that are the most happy, the most uplifted, the most, excited. It just doesn't really work that way. It's kind of like you see millionaires who they made millions and then they lose it all, and then they somehow just do another business venture and it comes all back. There's just certain people who have a frequency that attracts things to them. And then there's people right, who just are poor and they talk about being poor and they're always talking about being poor all the time, and then they stay poor. And that's what they get, that's what they're equal to. Then their circle is not very wealthy. Their family isn't, doing well. This is a broad example, but essentially, I really believe we get what we are. And I was just in a low frequency. My thoughts were negative. All I was thinking about was the things that weren't going right in my life. And I wasn't focusing on the things that were going right. So anyways, I hope this helps giving perspective in terms of like how I was able to create, you know, the life of my dreams. And I'm not like, you know, I'm not a millionaire. I've never really asked to be a millionaire. I never really wanted to be, but I'm so happy and so grateful and so lucky for the life that I have, and the friends and the family and the job, and to be able to speak to you about this and have this YouTube channel, and like everything's, I'm so grateful. And I think it comes down to this focus. Where your focus goes, energy flows. So anyways, I think I'm gonna host a live event on this, on the Magic Book, where I'm gonna kind of walk you through what this looks like and how I did this in my day-to-day to change my life. And again, this isn't just to like make money. That's not what I'm doing this for. It was like, I really struggled with anxiety and sadness and all that. And there's a way out. You can change that. It's all in our thoughts. If we're to take any of this new science, this quantum physics stuff seriously, which we should, you know, it's challenging Einstein's concept and theory of space-time. And it's now saying that, you know, space-time is secondary to consciousness. Like, consciousness for us is our thoughts, in part. So if we take that seriously, that means we have so much power and so much that we can do and so much that we can create. And, you know, you should find your own way of doing that, but maybe mine can help you get started on like a path, because it doesn't have to be the way it is right now if you're struggling in a place that you want to get out of. So anyways, let me know if you're interested in joining that. I will send you the link personally. All you need to do is write Magic Book in the comments below. And also let me know your thoughts about this, like what you think, if this makes sense, if it doesn't make sense. And yeah, I'd love to see you there. Anyways, I'm gonna go get on with my day, finish cooking my food, and I will see you guys in the next one. See ya.